The sound of a metal tray hitting the floor echoed through the packed mess hall at Fort Bragg. 200 pairs of eyes turned toward a small female recruit, bent over picking up the scattered utensils. She stood, maybe 5'4", thin in her stiff new uniform, brown hair pulled back in a regulation bun. But it wasn't her size that made everyone stare. It was the scars. They ran from her neck down her right arm, long trails of pale pink and silver white, some thick as rope, others branching like tree roots. Under the harsh fluorescent lights of the mess hall, they seemed to glow against her skin. "Yo, check it out!" A voice boomed from the corner table where the elite male recruits sat. Frankenstein's bride just joined the army. Laughter erupted, not quiet chuckles. Loud, brash, rolling laughter that filled the entire cafeteria. The girl, her name tag reading Reeves, didn't look up. Just set the tray on the counter, hands trembling slightly. The server behind the line avoided eye contact, quickly spooning food onto her plate. "Seriously, what happened?" Another recruit called out. "You lose a fight with a lawnmower." More laughter. A few people shook their heads uncomfortable, but nobody spoke up. Reeves took her tray turned around. Her shoulders were small, head bowed low. Everything in her body language screamed, "Don't look at me. Don't notice me." A drill sergeant 3 tables away glanced up from his meal, observed but didn't intervene. And nobody, not one person in that room of 200, knew that in the next 20 minutes, this cafeteria would become the starting point of a story, told and retold at Fort Bragg for years to come. Nobody knew that those scars told a tale even the hardest drill sergeants had never lived through. They were about to understand how wrong they'd been. Reeves found a table in the far corner, sat alone. The fluorescent lights hummed above her. Around the mess hall, conversations resumed, but glances kept sliding her way. Whispers, pointing. She kept her eyes down, methodically eating every movement precise, despite the attention. At the corner table, Marcus Caldwell, 6'2", with a quarterback's build, leaned back in his chair. Son of a colonel, he carried himself like he owned the place. "I give her 3 days before she drops out. She looks like she'd cry if you yelled at her." His crew laughed. David Park, the tech genius type with wire-rimmed glasses, nodded. "Bet she's only here because of some diversity quota. No way she makes it through the full 8 weeks." Jessica Torres, athletic and sharp-featured from a West Point family, added with a smirk. "Girl looks like she survived a blender accident. What makes anyone think she can handle combat?" Rodriguez, stocky and aggressive, pounded the table. $50 says she quits by Friday." Marcus stood his chair, scraping loud against the floor. "Let's find out." He walked toward Reeves's table, his crew following. The mess hall quieted, sensing confrontation. Drill Sergeant Haynes, a hardened infantry veteran in his mid-30s, watched from his position, but made no move to intervene. Marcus stopped in front of Reeves's table, towering over her. "This section's for real soldiers, sweetheart. Maybe try the kids' table." Reeves looked up for exactly 1 second. Her eyes were a cold, clear blue, completely empty of emotion. Then she looked back down at her plate. The lack of response seemed to irritate Marcus more than any comeback would have. David Park stepped forward. "He's talking to you. It's rude not to answer." Still nothing. J.J. Torres laughed a sharp sound. "Maybe she doesn't speak English, or maybe those scars go deeper than skin. Brain damage." A few recruits at nearby tables shifted uncomfortably. Private Tommy Chen, barely 18 with a baby face, half stood from his seat. "Yo, leave her alone, man." Marcus wheeled on him. "You her boyfriend, both of you, look like you need mommy to fight your battles." Tommy's face flushed red, but he sat back down. Reeves set down her fork, slowly, deliberately. Her movements had an odd quality, controlled in a way that didn't match her apparent vulnerability. She folded her napkin into a perfect square 4 corners, exactly 90 degrees, the kind of precision that came from muscle memory, military precision. Marcus leaned down, hands on the table. "Seriously, what's the story? Car crash, meth lab explosion. We're all dying to know what made you look like a horror movie extra." Reeves stood, picked up her tray. She was tiny compared to Marcus, barely reaching his shoulder. For a moment, everyone expected her to run. Instead, she met his eyes again, held his gaze for 3 full seconds. Then she spoke, voice low and even. "Tomorrow, 0600, shooting range." Marcus blinked, surprised. "What? You want to know if I belong here. Tomorrow, shooting range, 0600. Her voice had no emotion, just statement of fact. A grin spread across Marcus's face. Oh, she talks all right. Boys, spread the word. Tomorrow we get a show. He turned to the mess hall, raising his voice. Everyone hear that Scarface here thinks she can shoot. Laughter and whistles filled the room. Phones came out, texts flying. Within minutes, the entire company would know. Reeves walked past Marcus toward the exit. Despite the mockery, her posture was perfect. Shoulders back, head high, stride measured. She didn't rush, didn't shrink, just moved with an economy of motion that seemed almost practiced. Private Sarah Mitchell, quiet and observant at a middle table, watched Reeves leave. Sarah had been an EMT before enlisting. She knew trauma when she saw it, and something about those scars, the pattern of them, didn't look like an accident. She narrowed her eyes, thoughtful. Rodriguez slapped Marcus on the back. Dude, $50 says she doesn't even show up tomorrow. David pulled out his phone. I'm in. This is going to be hilarious. Drill Sergeant Haynes shook his head, muttering to Sergeant Keiko Tanaka, who just entered. Gonna be a long 8 weeks for that one. Tanaka, a sharp-eyed female drill sergeant in her early 30s, watched Reeves's retreating back. Maybe, maybe not. You see something I don't? Did you notice how she moved, how she stood? Tanaka's voice was quiet. That's not civilian bearing? Haynes shrugged. Probably watched too many military movies. But Tanaka kept watching the door where Reeves had disappeared, a crease forming between her brows. Something about the way that recruit carried herself triggered recognition. The automatic straightening of shoulders when attention was drawn, the measured, efficient movements, the way her eyes had scanned the room in systematic sweeps cataloging exits and potential threats. These weren't learned behaviors from boot camp preparation courses. These were deeply ingrained responses that came from somewhere else entirely. The evening stretched into night. In the female barracks, Reeves lay on her bunk in the darkness, staring at the ceiling. Around her, other recruits whispered and gossiped. She heard her name mentioned repeatedly, accompanied by speculation and cruel jokes. She didn't react, just controlled her breathing in for 4 counts hold, for 4, out for 4. A technique she'd learned long ago for managing stress and staying present. Sarah Mitchell occupied the bunk 2 spaces down. She watched Reeves in the dim light, filtering through the windows, noted the rigid control, the absolute stillness. That wasn't the posture of someone sleeping. That was the alertness of someone on watch. Sarah had seen it before in trauma patients who couldn't fully relax, even in safe environments. The body remembering danger long after the mind tried to forget. Hey, Sarah whispered, quiet enough that only Reeves could hear. You okay? A pause, then, fine. Look, I don't know your story and I'm not asking, but if you need someone to talk to, I'm here. I was an EMT before this, seen a lot of stuff. Nothing shocks me. Reeves turned her head slightly, acknowledging the offer. Thanks, I'm good. Sarah nodded, let it drop, but she filed away the interaction for future reference. Sometimes people needed help before they knew how to ask for it. Across the base in the male barracks, Marcus lay awake as well. His conscience, which he'd successfully ignored during the mess hall confrontation, now gnawed at him. His father had raised him better than that. Colonel Caldwell had always emphasized respect discipline, treating fellow soldiers as brothers and sisters in arms regardless of circumstance. But Marcus had been performing, playing to his audience, establishing dominance in the social hierarchy of basic training. He'd chosen an easy target, someone who seemed weak and isolated, and exploited that weakness for social capital. The realization made him uncomfortable. He pushed it away. She'd accepted the challenge. Tomorrow he'd prove his point on the range, and this whole thing would blow over. Except a small voice in the back of his mind whispered, "What if she doesn't fail? What if you're wrong about her?" He rolled over, pulled his pillow over his head, and tried to sleep. Before we see how this plays out, if you're already hooked by Maya's story and want to see how these cocky recruits learn their lesson the hard way, smash that like button right now. And here's the thing. This story gets wild. We're talking about reveals that'll make your jaw drop, skills that seem impossible, and a twist that'll completely flip everything you think you know. So, subscribe and hit that notification bell because you do not want to miss what happens next. Trust me, the next 15 minutes will be worth every second. The next morning arrived cold and misty. 05:45 hours. The shooting range at Fort Bragg sat at the eastern edge of the training grounds surrounded by berms and safety barriers. By 05:50, over 30 recruits had gathered word, having spread like wildfire through the barracks. Marcus and his crew arrived at 05:55, confident and laughing. Rodriguez carried a thermos of coffee. "This is better than Netflix." David had his phone out ready to record. "This is going viral. Watch." JJ stretched athletic and assured. "I almost feel bad. She's going to embarrass herself in front of everyone." "Don't feel bad," Marcus said. "She accepted the challenge. Maybe this'll teach her to know her limits." 05:58. No sign of Reeves. "Told you," Rodriguez crowed. "She chickened out." Then a voice came from behind them. "I'm here." They spun. Reeves stood 10 feet away. Nobody had heard her approach. She wore standard BDU's hair pulled back tight, face clean of makeup. In the early morning light, the scars looked even more pronounced, creating a map of violence across her visible skin. But her stance was what caught Corporal James's attention. James was the range instructor, a veteran with 2 deployments under his belt. He'd been briefed on the challenge and had come to supervise, expecting to send everyone home after a quick demonstration of incompetence. Except Reeves wasn't standing like an incompetent recruit. Her feet were shoulder-width apart, hands clasped behind her back, in parade rest weight slightly forward. That was a stance you learned after months of service, not something a fresh recruit just picked up. "All right," James called out. Everyone behind the safety line, Reeves front and center. The recruits formed a gallery behind the red line phones, out anticipatory grins on faces. Marcus made a show of taking the front position. James gestured to the weapon table. "Standard M4 carbine. You know the drill. Load, aim, fire. We'll start with stationary targets at 50 meters. Reeves approached the table. On it lay a disassembled M4 Standard Army rifle, broken down into its component parts for cleaning. It was supposed to be already assembled, but James had left it disassembled a small test. "You'll need to," James started. Reeves's hands moved, fast, fluid, automatic. Her fingers found the pieces, clicking them together with practiced precision. Bolt carrier group into upper receiver, charging handle, lower receiver attached, pins seated, magazine well checked, 12 seconds. The entire weapon assembled in 12 seconds. James's mouth was half open. "Hold up. Do that again." Reeves broke down the weapon without being asked. Disassembly was even faster muscle memory on full display. Then she reassembled it. 18 seconds this time, eyes never looking down, working purely by touch. A murmur ran through the watching recruits. That wasn't beginner speed. That was veteran speed. That was the speed of someone who'd assembled weapons in complete darkness, under fire, with hands shaking from adrenaline and cold. David Park lowered his phone slightly. "Okay, that's faster than regulation time. Who taught you that?" Reeves didn't answer. She loaded the magazine with the same fluid precision, thumb pressing rounds in, with a practiced rhythm that spoke of having loaded thousands of magazines. The brass cartridges slid home with mechanical efficiency, each one seated perfectly, without fumbling or hesitation. "Range is live," James called, still watching Reeves with a puzzled expression. "Commence firing!" Reeves brought the weapon up. Her stance shifted, slight lean forward, elbows in stock, seated firm in the pocket of her shoulder. Breathing steadied. The barrel didn't waver. Her cheek weld was perfect, eye aligned with the sight picture, finger resting on the trigger guard until the moment of firing. She fired 40 rounds in controlled pairs. The sound echoed across the range, sharp cracks that made some of the watching recruits flinch. But Reeves didn't flinch, didn't blink. Just maintained her breathing rhythm, firing on the exhale, resetting between shots with minimal movement. When the magazine was empty, Reeves safed the weapon, set it down, and stepped back. The entire process had been textbook perfect. No wasted motion, no hesitation, just pure practiced efficiency. James walked downrange to check the target. His pace slowed as he got closer. When he pulled the target down, his expression showed something between disbelief and respect. 2-inch grouping, center mass. Every single round within a circle the size of a baseball. At 50 meters with iron sights under the pressure of 30-plus spectators, a perfect score. James carried the target back. He keyed his radio. Sergeant Tanaka, you need to see this." Marcus's confidence had developed its first crack. His grin faltered. Beginner's luck. Let's see her do it under pressure. JJ nodded quickly, defensive energy creeping into her voice. Yeah, moving targets. Let's make this interesting. James looked at Reeves. You up for moving targets? Reeves nodded once. No boasting, no celebration of her performance. Just quiet acceptance of the next challenge. Sergeant Tanaka arrived as the moving target system was being set up. She took the target sheet from James, studied it in silence. Her eyes flicked to Reeves, then back to the grouping. Perfect score. Not good for a recruit. Perfect. The kind of perfect that came from hundreds of hours on the range, from training that went beyond qualification into the realm of combat preparation. The moving target drill used pop-up silhouettes that appeared at random intervals and distances. Standard qualification required hitting at least 10 out of 15. Good shooters hit 12 or 13. Expert marksmen hit 14. Ready on the line, James called. Targets will pop at random, engage as they appear. Reeves took her position, breathing steady. Stance perfect feet, shoulder width apart. Slight forward, lean a combat stance that Tanaka immediately recognized. That wasn't recreational range stance. That wasn't even standard military qualification stance. That was the stance of someone who'd fired under pressure, expecting to be fired upon, ready to move and shoot simultaneously. The first target popped at 30 meters left side. Reeves's reaction time was under 0.8 seconds. Her weapon came up, sight picture acquired, double tap, target dropped. The entire sequence was liquid smooth. Pop. 45 meters right side. She pivoted smooth, no wasted movement, hips and shoulders rotating together. Double tap, down, pop, pop. 2 targets, different distances. Simultaneous appearance designed to stress the shooter's decision-making. Reeves engaged near target first textbook, correct tactical priority, double tap, transition to far target double tap. Both down in under 2 seconds. Her transitions between targets were what caught the attention of everyone watching. There was no jerking motion, no overcorrection, just smooth flowing movement from one threat to the next, like a dancer moving through choreographed steps performed 10,000 times. Pop. 20 meters, sudden close threat. Most recruits would panic, rush the shot. Reeves maintained her rhythm. Double tap. Center mass. Pop, pop, pop. 3 targets in rapid succession, spread across the engagement area. She took them left to right, methodical, precise. 6 shots, 3 targets all down. The gallery of watching recruits had gone silent. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was a demonstration of mastery that none of them could match. 15 targets, 15 hits. Reaction time averaging under 0.8 seconds. No misses, no hesitation, no stress indicators. Sergeant Tanaka spoke quietly to Corporal James. That's not basic training shooting. Those are combat reflexes. She's firing like someone's shooting back. James nodded slowly. Yeah, I noticed. She's engaging threats in tactical priority order, close before far. Multiple threats assessed and prioritized in real time. That's not range training. That's combat experience. Who the heck is she? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. Tommy Chen, watching from the gallery, whispered in awe, Holy cow, who is she? David Park was still recording, but his expression had changed from mockery to confusion. The smug anticipation of watching someone fail had transformed into genuine puzzlement. This didn't fit the narrative he'd constructed. Marcus said nothing jaw tight. His world had just tilted sideways. The weak target he'd chosen to establish dominance had just demonstrated skills that exceeded his own by an order of magnitude. Rodriguez leaned toward Marcus, voice low and uncertain. Dude, maybe we should just drop this. Marcus's ego wouldn't let him. Pride, stubbornness, and the social pressure of 30 witnesses watching for his reaction combined into toxic determination. No way. Range is one thing. Anyone can get lucky with a gun. Let's see her in the pit, hand to hand. That's where real soldiers are made. JJ seized on it, desperate to regain narrative control. Exactly. Shooting is just mechanics. Let's see if she can actually fight. The challenge spread through the watching crowd. By 700 hours, word would reach every corner of the base. The freak show was escalating. Reeves heard the challenge, showed no reaction, just safed her weapon, set it on the table, and walked away. Her gait was measured, controlled, economical. Everything about her movements suggested training so deep it had become instinct. Sarah Mitchell, who joined the gallery to watch, fell into step beside Reeves as she left the range. That was impressive. It was adequate. Adequate? You just shot expert-level scores with 30 people watching and trying to make you fail. That's more than adequate. Reeves kept walking. They'll escalate. They need to prove I'm not what I appeared to be. And what's that? Weak, vulnerable, an acceptable target. Reeves paused, looked at Sarah directly for the first time. I've been through worse than mockery. I'll get through this. I believe you, but you don't have to do it alone. Not everyone here is like Marcus and his crew. A flicker of something passed across Reeves's face. Appreciation, maybe, or surprise that kindness still existed. Thank you. Sarah watched her walk away, more convinced than ever that Maya Reeves carried secrets that ran deeper than anyone imagined. You know what's fascinating about modern military medical technology? The same advanced wound treatment systems that helped soldiers like Maya survive catastrophic injuries are now being adapted for civilian use. We're talking about portable diagnostic devices that can assess tissue damage in seconds, emergency response equipment that fits in a backpack, and telemedicine platforms that connect patients to specialists anywhere in the world. These innovations literally save lives every single day, bringing battlefield-tested medical technology to emergency rooms and remote clinics worldwide. The gap between military and civilian medical care is shrinking fast, and that's changing everything about emergency response. By 1400 hours, word had spread further. The hand-to-hand combat training pit, a square of packed dirt surrounded by safety mats, had over 60 spectators. This wasn't official training. This was entertainment. Drill sergeants should have shut it down, but even they were curious now. The mysterious recruit who shot like a special operations soldier was about to be tested in physical combat. Reeves entered the pit, removed her jacket methodically. More scars became visible on her forearms. Some looked like burn patterns, the distinctive marking of fire or chemical exposure. Others were clean surgical lines, suggesting metal fragments removed by skilled hands. A few were ragged, poorly healed, the kind that came from field medicine in austere conditions. Sarah Mitchell, standing near the front of the growing crowd, whispered to Tommy, "Those aren't accident scars. Look at the pattern. That's shrapnel. Multiple wounds from explosive fragmentation. I've seen it in the ER." Tommy's eyes widened. "You mean like combat injuries, like real war?" "Exactly like combat injuries. IED blast patterns, artillery shrapnel, maybe grenade fragments. Those scars are from violence, not accidents." The whispers spread through the crowd, speculation building. A few recruits pulled out phones trying to search for information, finding nothing that matched. Marcus was already in the pit, rolling his shoulders, shadowboxing to warm up. He had 60 pounds on Reeves and a wrestling background from high school. State champion 2 years running. This should be over in seconds. He needed it to be over in seconds to restore the social hierarchy that had been disrupted on the shooting range. Drill Sergeant Haynes stepped in to referee, still skeptical, despite the shooting demonstration. "Keep it clean. Reeves, you can tap out any time. No shame in knowing your limits." The condescension in his voice was clear. He expected her to fold, expected Marcus to demonstrate the natural order of things, where size and strength determined outcomes. "Ready?" Haynes looked between them. "Begin!" Marcus lunged forward fast for his size, going for a double-leg tackle. Standard wrestling approach: use weight and strength to overwhelm the opponent, take them to the ground, where size advantage multiplied. Reeves sidestepped. Minimal movement, just enough. No panic, no wild scrambling, just pure efficiency. Her feet moved in small, precise steps that kept her balanced and mobile. Marcus grabbed for her arm, trying to establish control. She flowed out of the grip like water, using his momentum against him. Aikido principle: redirecting force rather than opposing it, turning an attacker's strength into their weakness. He spun, frustrated by the lack of contact, came in again, with hands reaching. This time, she didn't evade. She moved inside his reach fast, as a striking snake elbow strike to the solar plexus, controlled, but firm enough to make impact. Marcus's breath whooshed out in a surprised grunt. Before he could recover, her knee came up into his thigh, targeting the nerve cluster that would temporarily deaden the leg. Textbook Krav Maga. the Israeli combat system designed for quick neutralization of threats. Marcus went down on one knee, gasping. His leg buckled from the nerve strike. 8 seconds. The entire exchange had taken 8 seconds from begin to opponent on the ground. The crowd erupted. Phones were everywhere, dozens of angles capturing the moment. Shouting disbelief chaos rippling through the 60-plus spectators. This wasn't supposed to happen. The natural order had been violated. Sergeant Haynes stared, his certainty shattered. "Where the heck did you learn that?" Reeves extended a hand to Marcus, helped him up. Respectful, no gloating, no triumph in her expression. Just the calm professionalism of someone who'd done this 1,000 times and understood that defeating an opponent didn't require humiliating them. Marcus took her hand, face burning red. Pride wounded deeper than his body. The nerve strike pain would fade in minutes. The social damage would last much longer. Private Diaz, who'd been Marcus's friend since day one of basic training, stepped forward hesitantly. "Hey, that was really impressive. I'm sorry about the mess hall thing yesterday." Reeves nodded but didn't speak. She picked up her jacket, started to walk away, maintaining the silence that had become her signature. J.J. Torres, defensive and desperate to regain social footing, called out. Her voice carried an edge of desperation. "Okay, fine, she can fight. Doesn't mean she can lead or think tactically. Fighting's just muscle memory. Any trained monkey can throw punches. Strategy takes actual brains." David seized on it, analytical mind, searching for a metric where they could still claim superiority. "Tomorrow, tactical planning exercise in the classroom. Let's see if she's got the intelligence to match the reflexes. Real soldiers need to think, not just react." The crowd murmured agreement, already looking forward to the next test. The spectacle had become addictive. What other secrets did the scarred recruit hide? Reeves paused at the edge of the pit, looked back over her shoulder. For just a moment, something flickered in those blue eyes. Not anger, not triumph. Something colder. Calculation, assessment, like a chess player seeing 10 moves ahead and realizing the opponent didn't even understand the game being played. She walked away without responding, leaving the crowd to speculate and plan. Sergeant Tanaka followed at a distance, caught up to her out of earshot of the others. Reeves, medical bay, now, mandatory check after combat training. It was policy, and also an opportunity. Tanaka had questions that needed answers. The pieces weren't fitting together. Fresh recruit with combat-level shooting and hand-to-hand skills, extensive scarring, consistent with battlefield injuries, military bearing that came from years of service, not weeks of basic training. Something was very wrong with the official story. The medical bay was quiet, sterile, smelling of antiseptic and bandages. Medic Stevens, a calm man in his 30s, with the patient demeanor of someone who'd seen everything, gestured for Reeves to sit on the examination table. "Just routine? Any injuries from the match?" "No, sir." Stevens began the standard post-combat check. Pulse, blood pressure, range of motion in all joints. But his eyes kept returning to the scars. The extensive pattern of them, covering her arm's neck, and based on what little he could see at the collar, likely much more beneath the uniform. "These are old injuries," he said carefully, professionally. "May I ask how you received them?" "Rather not talk about it, sir." "I'm not asking for gossip, medical record purposes." He examined a particularly nasty scar on her forearm, tracing the pattern with experienced eyes. The wound had healed in layers, suggesting deep penetration. "These are military-grade injuries, IED blast pattern, shrapnel wounds causing radial scarring. What unit were you with?" Reeves's face remained neutral, but something shuddered behind her eyes. A door closing. "I wasn't in a unit, sir." Stevens made notes in her file, clearly not believing her, but not pushing. Years of military medicine had taught him that some soldiers carried burdens they couldn't share, information locked behind classification levels, and trauma too deep for casual conversation. He flagged the file with a note. "Injury patterns consistent with combat trauma. Recommend further evaluation. Possible prior service record discrepancy." When Reeves left, Stevens immediately copied the file and sent it to Sergeant Tanaka with a message, "You need to see this. Something's not right." Sergeant Tanaka went straight to her office, closed the door, and logged into the military personnel database. She typed in the search parameters, Maya Reeves, female age 27. Yes, multiple results appeared, the system pulling from the vast database of current and former military personnel. Maya Reeves in logistics at Fort Hood, Maya Reeves in signals at Fort Gordon, Maya Reeves in administrative services at the Pentagon, and one result flagged in red with restricted access indicators, classified, special access required. Tanaka tried to open the file, permission denied. She needed higher clearance than a drill sergeant's security level. The classification coding suggested special operations or intelligence compartmentalization. She picked up her phone, dialed the personnel security office at division headquarters. "Yeah, I need clearance verification on a recruit in my company. Maya Reeves, currently in basic training, Company B, 3rd Battalion. Her files showing classified restriction, and I need to know why." The voice on the other end was bureaucratic bored. "I'll have to submit a formal request. Could take 48 to 72 hours for review and approval. Make it faster. Something's not right here. This recruit has skills and injuries inconsistent with her official record. I need to know what I'm dealing with. I'll mark it priority, but I can't promise anything faster than 48 hours. You know how these things work." Tanaka hung up, frustrated. She opened the restricted file screen again, stared at the red classification banner. What was a special access program doing hiding in her basic training company? That night in the barracks common area, the atmosphere was strange. Recruits kept glancing at Reeves, who sat alone in a corner, methodically cleaning a training rifle that didn't need cleaning. The movements were meditative, practiced the kind of ritual that came from doing something so many times it became therapy. Strip the bolt carrier group, wipe each surface, inspect for wear, reassemble with mechanical precision. Tommy Chen approached cautiously, drawn by curiosity and genuine respect. "So, where'd you serve before this?" Reeves didn't look up from the rifle. "I didn't. Come on, those moves. That shooting, you had to have trained somewhere. That's not beginner level anything." "No prior service." Her tone was flat, allowing no further questions, shutting down the conversation with finality. Tommy retreated, confused and unsatisfied, but not wanting to push someone who could clearly handle herself. Sarah Mitchell, listening from across the room, where she pretended to read a field manual, didn't believe it for a second. She'd seen enough trauma patients to recognize the signs. The hyper-awareness, the way Reeves's eyes tracked every person who entered the room, constantly updating threat assessments. The controlled breathing, measured and deliberate, suggesting anxiety management techniques. The ritual cleaning, a form of meditation that kept hands busy and mind focused on controllable tasks. Those were PTSD management techniques, military-grade coping mechanisms taught by therapists who specialized in combat trauma. Sarah made a mental note to keep watching, to offer support when the moment was right. Sometimes the strongest people were the ones closest to breaking, held together only by discipline and determination. As lights out approached and the barracks settled into quiet, Reeves lay on her bunk, fully dressed, boots beside her bed, ready for rapid deployment if needed. Old habits from a life nobody in this building understood. She stared at the ceiling, controlling her breathing, managing the memories that threatened to surface in the darkness. Somewhere in the building, Marcus lay awake as well, wrestling with shame and confusion. Tomorrow would bring another challenge, another test. But for the first time, he wondered if he was the one being tested rather than conducting the test. The base settled into night routines, guard patrols, security lights casting long shadows, and in the heart of it all, a soldier with secrets preparing for whatever came next. The next morning brought the tactical planning exercise. 0700 hours. Captain Reynolds, the company commander, a stern man in his early 40s, with the bearing of someone who'd seen combat and come back, supervised the classroom portion of training. Today's scenario: defensive perimeter establishment in hostile territory. Real-world application of principles that could mean the difference between life and death, downrange. Teams of 5. Reynolds announced, his voice carrying authority earned through experience. You'll be given a map showing terrain features, a threat assessment, and a resource list. Your mission: design a patrol base that can withstand enemy contact for 72 hours while waiting for extraction. You have 90 minutes. Begin. The teams were assigned, whether by coincidence or deliberate design from an instructor who'd heard about the mess hall incident. Reeves ended up grouped with Marcus David JJ and Rodriguez, forced cooperation with her antagonists, an exercise in both tactical planning and interpersonal dynamics. David immediately took charge, spreading the map on the table, with the confidence of someone who'd studied military tactics theoretically, but never applied them practically. Okay, standard patrol base setup according to the field manual, machine gun position here for overwatch of the main approach. Observation posts on these 2 high points to provide early warning. Ammunition cache in the center for equal access from all fighting positions. Sleeping areas arranged in shifts for 24-hour security coverage. It was textbook. Competent enough for a training exercise. Exactly what the field manual would suggest for a conventional patrol base. The kind of answer that would earn a passing grade and demonstrate that the student had studied the material, but it was also predictable, conventional, and filled with vulnerabilities that a competent enemy would exploit ruthlessly. Reeves studied the map in silence for 30 seconds, her eyes tracing contour lines, elevation markers, terrain features that others glanced at but didn't truly see. Her finger moved across the map, but she didn't speak yet, allowing David his moment of leadership while she assessed. Then she pointed to a specific terrain feature. That ridgeline, it's a problem. David looked where she pointed, saw nothing concerning. JJ dismissed it immediately. It's 600 meters out. Standard doctrine says we'd see anyone approaching from that distance. We'd have plenty of time to respond. Not with thermals, not at night. Reeves's voice was quiet, but carried absolute certainty born from experience. High ground advantage combined with thermal optics at night would give perfect overwatch of your entire position. They could identify every fighting position, count your personnel, track your movement patterns, and pick off anyone who stepped outside cover. You'd be compromised before you knew they were there. David frowned, defensive about his plan being criticized. How would you know about thermal capability and night operations doctrine? Reeves ignored the question entirely, her finger moving to another feature on the map. And this dry riverbed here, looks safe on the map, presents as a natural defensive barrier. But it's a flash flood risk in this region during monsoon season. One rainstorm, and your primary escape route becomes a death trap. You'd be cut off, pinned against high ground, with no way to maneuver. She paused, letting them absorb that, then continued. Current wind patterns from the west mean dust and sand accumulation in this depression here. Looks like solid ground on the map, but it's probably loose sand. Try to move vehicles through there, and you'll bog down, become stationary targets. Marcus, still smarting from yesterday's defeat in the pit, challenged her directly. How do you know about thermal scopes and wadi flooding and desert terrain analysis? Those aren't things they teach in basic. Reeves's finger moved to another point on the map, still not addressing his question. Ammunition cache placement. Center position seems logical for equal access, but it's actually a critical vulnerability. If you take indirect fire mortar or rocket attack, a central ammo cache becomes a secondary explosion hazard. One hit, and you lose not just the ammunition, but potentially everyone nearby. Creates a catastrophic single point of failure. The analysis was surgical, precise, detailed far beyond basic training level. This was the kind of thinking that came from actual combat experience, from having made these mistakes or seen them made from operations where poor planning resulted in casualties rather than low grades. Captain Reynolds, who'd been circulating through the teams, checking progress, stopped at their table. He leaned forward, genuinely interested now. The earlier teams had given him variations on the same basic plan. This was different. Reeves, front and center. The classroom went silent. All eyes turned to their table. Reeves stood, moved to the front of the room, came to attention with parade ground precision. Her bearing was perfect, automatic, suggesting years of conditioning. Reynolds studied her face, searching his memory. That analysis of thermal threats and terrain vulnerabilities, where did you learn to think like that? Just makes sense, sir. Basic tactical principles applied to the specific terrain. No, that's not beginner intuition. That's not even advanced tactical training for conventional forces. That's special operations level analysis, the kind of thinking that keeps teams alive in contested territory. His eyes narrowed, recognition tickling at the edges of his memory. You look familiar. Have we met before, perhaps at another post? A pause barely perceptible to anyone not watching carefully. But Sarah Mitchell, sitting 3 rows back, saw the micro expression. Fear controlled instantly, but present for a fraction of a second. No, sir. I'm certain I would remember meeting a company commander. Reynolds held her gaze, clearly unconvinced. His instincts, honed through multiple combat deployments, screamed that something didn't add up. but without evidence, he let it drop. Return to your team. Incorporate her suggestions into your plan. All of them. As Reeves walked back, Rodriguez whispered urgently to David, "Dude, what if she's like CIA or something? Undercover testing how we'd react to someone with her background?" David shook his head slowly, but the same thought had occurred to him. Or military intelligence. Or she could be from an investigative unit checking for problems in basic training. I posted that video of the mess hall. What if we're being evaluated? JJ's face paled. Oh God, what if this is some kind of test and we're failing? Marcus said nothing, but wheels turned in his head. His father was a colonel with access to personnel databases. Maybe it was time to ask some questions through unofficial channels. They reworked the plan, incorporating Reeves's suggestions, moved the machine gun position to cover the thermal threat avenue, adjusted the ammunition storage to distributed caches, identified alternate escape routes that avoided the wadi. When they presented to Captain Reynolds, he nodded approvingly. Now, that's a patrol base with a chance of surviving contact. Good work incorporating multiple perspectives. He paused. Reeves, did you make all these corrections? The team made the corrections, sir. I just identified potential issues. Reynolds smiled slightly. Leadership through influence rather than command? Well done. He moved to the next team. Okay, if you're starting to suspect Maya isn't what she seems, you're not alone. But what you're thinking right now, you're not even close to the truth. The real reveal is going to blow your mind. So if you haven't liked this video, yet do it now, because what's coming in the next few minutes is absolutely insane. You'll want to remember exactly where you were when you heard this. That afternoon, the entire company was ordered to the obstacle course for final weekly evaluation. It was a formal event important enough that visiting officers would be present to observe recruit progress and assess training effectiveness. Among the visitors, General Frank Morrison, a 2-star general, on an inspection tour of Fort Bragg training facilities, accompanied by his aide and several staff officers. He stood near the viewing platform discussing training methodology with the battalion commander, but his attention was partially on the recruits forming up. He'd started his career as a lieutenant in special operations. He knew what trained soldiers looked like, and he enjoyed watching the transformation from civilian to warrior. 200 recruits formed up at the start of the course. The obstacle course at Fort Bragg was legendary, notorious for breaking spirits and bodies. 30-foot cargo net requiring upper body strength and courage. Balance beams over water pits testing coordination and nerve. Walls requiring teamwork and problem solving. Rope swings over muddy pits testing grip strength and commitment. Average completion, time 10 to 12 minutes. Fast time, under 9 minutes. Only the most athletic and determined recruits broke 8 minutes. Marcus, desperate to regain his status after 2 days of humiliation, made a show of stretching elaborately. His crew gathered around him, offering encouragement, building him up. "One more chance, Reeves," he called out loud enough for the entire company to hear. "Beat my time on the O course and we're done. We'll leave you alone, admit you've earned your place. But if you lose, you admit you don't belong here. Public admission in front of everyone. Deal." The challenge was public, issued in front of 200 witnesses and multiple officers. Reeves, who'd been silent through most of the gathering, looked at him steadily. Fatigue showed around her eyes. A week of being tested, challenged, isolated, and harassed was wearing even on her considerable resilience. The constant vigilance required to maintain her cover story was exhausting. But she nodded once. One short, sharp nod of acceptance. Marcus ran first. He was athletic strong, fast motivated by the need to reclaim dominance. Wall climbs were easy with his reach and upper body strength. Balance beams crossed with the confidence of someone who'd never seriously doubted his physical abilities. The rope swing executed with raw power rather than technique. He pushed hard breath, coming in gasps by the end, but crossed the finish line at 8 minutes and 45 seconds. Excellent time. The crowd cheered. Marcus jogged back, barely winded after a minute of recovery. "Your turn, Scarface. Try not to cry when you fall off the cargo net." Reeves approached the start line, drew one deep breath, held it for 4 counts, released it slowly for 4 counts. Centering technique, preparing mentally as much as physically. "Begin." Drill Sergeant Haynes called, stopwatch clicking. She ran. Not rushed, not frantic, smooth, efficient. professional pace that suggested energy conservation and long-term planning. At the first wall, she pulled herself up one-armed while securing the rope with her other hand, simultaneously an advanced technique that showed core strength and training far beyond basic level. Rope swing next. She caught the rope swung across and landed in a rolling motion, but not an athletic roll designed to dissipate momentum. A tactical roll shoulder to opposite hip, coming up on her feet in a fighting stance with hands ready. The kind of roll you did when you expected to come up shooting, when landing meant immediate action rather than celebration. Several of the watching officers noticed. General Morrison's attention sharpened. He'd seen that roll before in special operations training and combat footage. That was a tactical movement, not an obstacle course technique. Balance beam over water. Most recruits crossed carefully, arms out for balance testing each step. Reeves crossed at near-run speed, arms barely moving, core control. Perfect, the balance of someone who'd crossed worse obstacles under worse conditions. Someone who'd moved across damaged structures, collapsed bridges, narrow ledges where falling meant death, rather than wet clothes. At 6 minutes, she was ahead of Marcus's pace. The crowd noise increased, a mixture of excitement and disbelief. Phones came out everywhere, everyone wanting to capture the moment. Then, the cargo net. 30 feet of rope mesh wet from earlier rain, usually climbed slowly for safety. Reeves attacked it aggressively, climbing fast, hand over hand, feet, finding purchase automatically. 2/3 up her foot, slipped on the wet rope. She caught herself immediately, professional reflexes preventing the fall, but the stumble cost her momentum and rhythm. Her arms shook, muscles fatigued from a week of constant physical challenges and inadequate recovery time. Marcus, watching from below with his crew, saw his chance to break her. "Choke just like you'll choke in real combat. You're not built for this." Rodriguez joined in, voice carrying across the field. "Give up, Scarface. You don't belong here. Go home to mommy." JJ added her voice. "You're embarrassing yourself. Everyone can see you're about to fail." Reeves hung there for a moment, arms trembling from fatigue and the awkward position. For the first time all week, genuine uncertainty crossed her face. Exhaustion. The accumulated weight of constant proving herself against those who'd decided she was less before knowing anything about her. The isolation, the harassment, the never-ending need to maintain perfect control. But she climbed, reached the top through pure determination. Started down the far side, movement slower, now mechanical rather than fluid. Marcus positioned himself at the bottom exit point, physically blocking her path with his larger body. "Too slow. You're done. Admit it." Reeves dropped the last 6 feet, landed in a crouched knees, absorbing impact, came up standing. 8 minutes, 58 seconds. She'd matched his time, almost exactly, missing by only 13 seconds, despite the slip and the fatigue. But Marcus wasn't interested in close calls. He grabbed her shoulder hard, using his size and strength to spin her around, with force meant to intimidate and physically dominate. "Admit it, you're not cut out for RIP." The sound of fabric tearing echoed across the field like a gunshot in the sudden silence that fell. Every conversation stopped. Every movement ceased. 200 people frozen in the moment. Marcus's grip had caught the shoulder seam of Reeves's BDU shirt. The fabric, already stressed from the obstacle course, tore clean across the shoulder blade in a ragged line that exposed skin beneath, and revealed the tattoo. Black ink, professional military work, impossible to fake. A skull with crossed rifles beneath it, the symbol recognized by anyone who'd studied special operations iconography. Text above, in sharp military stencil font, Ghost 7. Text below, in the same font, Nightfall. And underneath both, a series of numbers in smaller text. Coordinates. Specific latitude and longitude, marking a place, a moment, a memory carved in skin and blood. 3 seconds of absolute silence across the entire field. 200 people frozen. Even the wind seemed to stop. Time itself paused as brains processed what eyes were seeing. Then Private Diaz, whose father had been a Marine and who'd grown up on military bases hearing the stories that weren't in official histories, gasped audibly. His voice broke the silence. "Oh my God!" General Morrison, 50 yards away in mid-conversation with the battalion commander, froze mid-sentence. His head snapped toward the obstacle course like he'd heard a gunshot. Toward Maya Reeves. Toward the tattoo now visible to everyone. His face went pale. He knew that insignia, knew what Ghost 7 meant, knew what Operation Nightfall had cost. Sergeant Tanaka's eyes went wide, her hand coming up to cover her mouth in shock. No, no way. That unit was... She couldn't finish the sentence. The implications were too enormous. Marcus still gripped Reeves's shoulder, confused by the sudden silence, by the way every face had turned toward them, with expressions of shock and horror. What is it? General Morrison started walking. His stride was purposeful, measured command presence radiating from every movement. The crowd parted without being asked, creating a corridor. Officers came to attention as he passed. Even recruits who didn't know his rank recognized authority when they saw it. He stopped 3 feet from Reeves. His face was unreadable, carved from stone, decades of military discipline, controlling whatever emotions churned beneath. Sarah Mitchell whispered urgently to someone nearby, her EMT knowledge combining with military history. Ghost Unit 7, that's the Kandahar mission. Operation Nightfall, 2023, the massacre. Tommy Chen frantically searched on his phone, fingers shaking, finding the Wikipedia's entry, the news articles, the sanitized official reports that told only the surface of the story. General Morrison came to attention with parade ground precision, raised his hand in the slowest, most deliberate salute of his career. Every eye watched that hand rise, understanding that something monumental was happening. Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves, Ghost Unit 7, Operation Nightfall. His voice carried across the silent field like a pronouncement from on high, each word dropping like a hammer blow. Sole survivor, 14 KIA, 72 hours behind enemy lines, surrounded by hostile forces. 2 magazines remaining, extracted with critical injuries. Silver Star for conspicuous gallantry. Purple Heart for wounds received in action. Bronze Star with Valor Device for heroic achievement. The silence shattered into chaos. Marcus's hand dropped from Maya's shoulder like he'd touched an electrified fence. He stumbled backward, face draining from red to white in seconds. His mouth opened and closed repeatedly, no sound emerging. The arrogant quarterback confidence, the entitled son of a colonel, superiority, crumbled into something like existential horror. He'd mocked a decorated war hero. He'd harassed a combat veteran whose achievements exceeded his father's career. J.J. Torres covered her mouth with both hands, tears forming instantly and spilling down her cheeks. She understood now. Every scar, every line of damage across Maya's skin. Battle. Real battle. The kind that killed 14 people and left one person standing through a combination of skill luck and refusal to surrender. The kind that shaped someone into something harder than normal people could understand. David Park lowered his phone hands, shaking violently. I posted, oh God, I mocked a... He couldn't finish the sentence. Bile rose in his throat. He'd turned someone's trauma into entertainment, spread it across social media for likes and laughs. Rodriguez simply collapsed to a sitting position, where he stood, head dropping into his hands. All week he'd taunted someone who'd survived hell he couldn't imagine. He'd harassed a soldier who'd done things he'd only seen in movies. The shame was crushing. Drill Sergeant Haynes snapped to attention with such force his heels cracked together audibly. He rendered a salute with parade ground precision, but his face showed deep shame. He'd dismissed her, assumed she was weak based on appearance, let the harassment happen under his watch, failed his duty to protect all soldiers regardless of circumstance. Sergeant Tanaka saluted, tears streaming freely down her face. Ma'am, we didn't know, ma'am. We had no idea who you were. Her voice broke on the last words. Captain Reynolds moved forward, quickly came to attention, saluted with rigid formality. Staff Sergeant, it's an honor to share this field with you. 200 recruits reacted in waves. Some snapped to attention immediately, military instinct overriding shock. Others stood frozen, unable to process the reversal. Still others raised phones, 50-plus cameras now pointing at the tattoo at Maya, at the general's salute. The viral moment crystallized, spreading before it even ended, already being texted and posted and shared across every platform. Tommy Chen stared at his phone screen, voice shaking as he read aloud to those nearby. Operation Nightfall, August 12, 2023. Ghost Unit 7 deployed for high-value target extraction in Kandahar province, ambushed by superior forces. Sustained combat for 9 hours, 14 killed in action, 1 survivor, Multiple decorations for valor, details classified. He looked up, eyes wide. She's a legend. This is real. Sarah Mitchell allowed herself a small, knowing smile tinged with sadness. I knew something was different. The way she moved, the scars, the hyper-awareness. Nobody gets those from an accident. Nobody carries themselves that way without reason. Corporal James spoke to another range instructor, nearby voice hushed with awe and regret. We've been testing a combat veteran like she's a basic recruit. We put her through standard drills when she's done things we'll never see in our entire careers. We failed her. Medic Stevens, standing at the back of the crowd, suddenly connected every piece of the medical puzzle. The scars, 72 hours of sustained combat, IED blast patterns, the torture marks I saw on her back during the exam. She survived that, for 3 days while her team died around her, and we let them mock her for it. Private Anderson, a young female recruit with wide eyes and dreams of serving, stared at Maya like seeing a superhero materialize from a comic book. This was possible. A woman could do this, could survive this, could be this. The impossible became real in that moment. Sergeant Major Price, a senior NCO in his 50s, standing at the far edge of the crowd, came to attention with slow, profound respect. He'd been at Fort Bragg when news of Operation Nightfall came through the classified channels. He remembered the casualty report. 15 sent in. 1 came out. 14 flag-draped coffins. 1 survivor so broken she spent 18 months in medical rehabilitation. The worst loss Ghost Unit had taken in a decade of covert operations. The atmosphere of the training field transformed completely. What had been an evaluation ground, a place of competition and hierarchy and proving oneself, became something else entirely. Sacred space. Memorial ground. The place where truth finally broke through layers of deception and assumption. Phones everywhere captured the moment from every conceivable angle. General Morrison holding his salute, face grave and respectful. Maya standing with torn shirt, exposing the tattoo face neutral, but eyes showing the first crack of emotion after days of perfect control. The circle of recruits half at attention, half frozen in shock, all understanding that they were witnessing something they'd tell their grandchildren about. This footage would be viewed millions of times within 48 hours, dissected frame by frame, analyzed by military experts, shared across every social media platform and military forum, discussed in leadership courses and ethics classes. The legend of Maya Reeves, the soldier they mocked, was born in that instant and would grow with each retelling. Here's something interesting about military veterans returning to service or training. There's a whole field of legal and educational support, specifically designed for them. We're talking about programs that help veterans navigate complex regulations about re-entry medical discharge appeals and educational benefits. Professional certification courses teach advocates how to represent veterans in disability claims, and specialized legal clinics focus exclusively on military justice and benefits law. These services help people understand their rights, access their benefits, and get the support they earned through service. Because knowing what you're entitled to and how to get it shouldn't require a law degree. General Morrison finally lowered his salute after a full 10 seconds longer than regulation required, making a statement through the extended gesture. At ease, Staff Sergeant. Maya's shoulders relaxed fractionally, but her bearing remained sharp military discipline so deeply ingrained it operated automatically even in crisis moments. Why are you here? Morrison's voice was gentle now, private despite the audience of 200. In basic training, after everything you've been through, after everything you've accomplished. Maya's voice when she spoke was quiet but steady, the first time most of the recruits had heard her say more than a handful of words. Medical discharge after the mission, sir. PTSD diagnosis, 18 months of intensive recovery and therapy. Requested reinstatement last month when I was cleared by the medical board. And they made you redo basic training. Morrison's voice carried disbelief. After your service record, after your decorations, regulations, sir. Medical discharge exceeding 12 months requires requalification at basic training level, regardless of prior service or rank. No bitterness in her tone, just acceptance of facts. The system doesn't have provisions for my specific circumstances. Morrison turned to face Marcus and his crew, his expression hardening from respectful to condemnatory. "Do you understand what you've been doing? This soldier lost 14 brothers and sisters in a single day, spent 3 days fighting for her life against impossible odds while wounded and alone, earned decorations for valor that most service members will never even see awarded, and you mocked her scars, made jokes about injuries received defending this nation." Marcus tried to speak. His mouth moved, but no words came. Tears started down his face. The full weight of his cruelty, magnified by knowledge of who she really was, crushed him. He fell to his knees in the dirt, unable to support himself against the shame. JJ was openly sobbing now, unable to control the emotion. "I'm so sorry. We didn't know. We couldn't have known. But that's not an excuse. We should have been kind regardless. We failed every principle we came here to learn." "That's exactly the point," Morrison cut her off, his command voice emerging. "You didn't know, but you treated her with contempt anyway, based purely on appearance, on assumptions. Every scar you mocked tells a story of survival and sacrifice. Every mark on her skin represents a moment she could have died, but chose to keep fighting." Sergeant Tanaka stepped forward, holding a file folder retrieved from her office when she'd seen the general approaching. "Sir, I ran her clearance check this week when her skills seemed inconsistent with her file. It came back classified with special access restrictions. I couldn't access her full service record." Morrison nodded slowly. "Ghost unit operations are compartmented at the highest levels, above top secret with special access protocols. She couldn't have told you even if she wanted to. The mission details remain classified. The methods remain classified. Even her presence on that operation is technically classified information." Maya pulled her torn shirt back over the tattoo, trying to return to anonymity to hide the truth that had been forcibly exposed. But that ship had sailed. 200 people had seen. Hundreds of phones had recorded it. There was no going back to quiet obscurity. The secret was out, irretrievable, spreading across the digital landscape even as she stood there. "Staff Sergeant Reeves, walk with me." Morrison's tone made it clear this wasn't a request, but also wasn't harsh. "Everyone else dismissed. Return to your duties. Now." They moved away from the crowd toward the edge of the field where they could have relative privacy. His aide maintained a respectful distance, ensuring no one approached or overheard. When they were sufficiently isolated, Morrison's formal bearing softened slightly enough to show the human beneath the stars. "You don't have to be here. I can make calls right now. Have you assigned to Advanced Instruction Leadership Development course, Special Operations Preparation, instructor positions at any of a dozen schools? You've already proven everything 100 times over." Maya shook her head firmly. "No, sir. I need to do this right. Start fresh. Prove to myself I can still—" Her voice broke slightly, the first real vulnerability she'd shown in days of perfect control. "That I can still be a soldier. Not just a survivor. Not just the one who made it out. I need to know I'm still capable of serving, not just existing." Morrison studied her face, saw the determination beneath the exhaustion and trauma, recognized the look of someone who needed purpose more than safety. "Then finish your 8 weeks, complete basic training the right way. But know this, and I want you to hear me. Clearly anyone gives you trouble. From this point forward, they answer directly to me. My personal cell number is being added to your emergency contact list. You call if you need support." "Thank you, sir, but I think the trouble just ended." "Maybe, but the attention is just beginning. This is going to spread. National news probably. You'll be famous whether you want it or not. Can you handle that?" "I handled 72 hours in hell, sir. I can handle being famous." Morrison smiled slightly, the first warmth he'd shown. "Fair point." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "And, Maya, your team would be proud. You survived when they didn't. You kept fighting when most would have surrendered. You're still fighting. That's what they died for. So, you could have a future. Don't waste it by giving up now." A single tear tracked down Maya's cheek, cutting through dust and sweat. The first emotion she'd allowed herself to show publicly in the entire week of harassment and testing. "I hope so, sir. I hope they'd be proud. It's the only thing that keeps me going some days." Morrison saluted again, crisp and formal. "It's an honor to serve in the same army as you, Staff Sergeant. Welcome home." She returned the salute parade ground, perfect, the gesture carrying weight and meaning beyond the mechanical movement. He walked away, leaving her standing alone at the edge of the field. But not alone for long. Tommy Chen approached first hesitant but determined, driven by genuine respect and the need to acknowledge his earlier failure to defend her. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say, you're incredible. Thank you for your service, and I'm sorry for not standing up for you more forcefully when they were harassing you." Sarah Mitchell came next, medical knowledge combining with empathy. "I was an EMT before this. I recognized trauma signs, recognized that your scars weren't from accidents. I should have said something, should have offered support more directly. I'm sorry I waited." Private Anderson, the young female recruit who'd watched the entire week with growing fascination, could barely speak through her emotion. "You're my hero. Everything I thought was impossible, you've proven is real. I want to be like you someday, strong like you." One by one, recruits came. Some offered apologies for their silence during the harassment. Some simply wanted to shake her hand, to touch someone who'd done impossible things. Some stood silent, rendering respect through presence rather than words, understanding that some moments transcended language. Maya accepted each one with quiet grace, saying little, conserving emotional energy, but her eyes showed appreciation for the gestures, for the acknowledgement, for the recognition that came too late to prevent the pain, but arrived nonetheless. Marcus approached last after everyone else had gone, when Maya stood alone again, watching the sun set over Fort Bragg. He came to attention, rendered a proper salute, despite them being the same rank nominally. "Ma'am, there's nothing I can say that makes this right. No apology sufficient for what I did, what I said, how I treated you." Maya returned the salute, studied his face, saw genuine remorse, not just fear of consequences. "You were ignorant, cruel from ignorance combined with the need to establish social dominance. It's a common pattern in group dynamics. That doesn't excuse it. No, but it explains it. Explanation isn't justification, but it's a starting point for change." She paused. "The question is whether you learn from this, whether you become better. That's what determines if your cruelty was meaningless or became a catalyst for growth. I want to learn. I want to be better. Would you consider teaching me real tactics, combat skills, the things they don't teach in basic? I know I don't deserve it, but report 0500 tomorrow. Bring your crew. We train together." Relief flooded Marcus's face, so intense it was almost painful to witness. "Thank you, ma'am. You won't regret this. I swear." "I better not." He left, and Maya was finally alone. She walked to the cargo net, the obstacle that had triggered everything, and stared up at the 30 feet of rope mesh that had torn her shirt and exposed her secret. She should feel angry, should feel violated by the forced revelation, but instead she felt lighter. The weight of secrecy, of pretending to be someone she wasn't, lifted slightly. The hiding was over. She could stop performing weakness and just exist. Sergeant Tanaka found her there as darkness fell. "You did good today, Reeves. Better than good. You handled an impossible situation with grace. I didn't have much choice. You always have choices. You chose not to retaliate when they harassed you, chose not to report them formally, chose to teach instead of punish. Those were all choices, and they were the right ones. Will there be consequences? For the security breach, for the classified information exposure? General Morrison is handling it. The classification is being reviewed. Given the circumstances, I doubt anyone faces serious repercussions. Sometimes the truth needs to come out, regulations or not." They stood in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Finally, Tanaka spoke again. "I looked up Operation Nightfall. Not the classified parts, just what's public record. I can't imagine what you went through, what you survived." Maya said nothing, staring into the darkness. "But I'm glad you're still here, still fighting, still teaching. The Army needs people like you, people who understand the cost. Some days I wonder if I should be. Still here, I mean. Those days are exactly why you need to be, because you understand how precious this is, how easily it can be lost. That wisdom matters. That perspective saves lives." Tanaka headed back toward the office building, leaving Maya alone with the night and her thoughts. That evening, word spread beyond Fort Bragg. The videos hit social media, spread, virally jumped from platform to platform. Military forums exploded with discussion. News outlets picked up the story. By midnight, Ghost Unit 7 was trending nationally. Maya's phone, which she'd left in her locker, filled with missed calls and messages. Some from former teammates' families reaching out to connect with the sole survivor. Some from media outlets requesting interviews. Some from military leadership extending support and offers. She ignored all of it. Instead, she lay on her bunk in the quiet barracks, finally allowed some peace. Around her, other recruits gave her space, understanding that heroes needed solitude sometimes more than celebration. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, media attention, official inquiries, the complexities of being suddenly famous. But tonight she just breathed controlled and steady and allowed herself to exist without performing. All right, we're about to get to the moment that changes everything. Before we do, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Because stories like this, real military mysteries, incredible reveals hidden identities. This is what we do here, and what you're about to witness. This is the kind of scene that gets talked about for years. Let's get into it. The next 4 weeks transformed everything. Maya became a legend at Fort Bragg, but more importantly, she became a teacher. Starting the next morning at 0500, an unofficial training group formed. Marcus JJ, David Rodriguez, and a handful of other motivated recruits met with Maya an hour before official PT. She taught them CQB principles, how to move through structures, clearing rooms, covering angles, tactical movement that kept you alive when bullets flew, how to read terrain, not just for observation, but for cover concealment avenues of approach and escape. She was demanding, accepting no excuses, pushing them harder than the drill sergeants did. But she was also patient, explaining the why behind every technique, the lessons paid for in blood by soldiers who'd learned the hard way. In combat, you don't have time to think, she told them during one session, her voice carrying the weight of experience. Your training has to be so deep, it's automatic. When bullets fly, you fall back on what's been drilled into muscle memory. So we drill until it's unconscious. JJ asked during a water break, how do you stay calm when everything's chaos and people are dying? Maya paused, choosing words carefully. You accept that you might die. Once you truly accept that, really make peace with it, fear becomes manageable. Not gone, never gone, but managed, controlled. You can function through it instead of being paralyzed by it. The training built camaraderie faster than any official program could. They covered each other's weaknesses, pushed each other's strengths, and slowly, organically, forgiveness replaced resentment. Shared purpose erased old conflicts. By week 6, the group functioned as a genuine team. They moved together, thought together, anticipated each other. Marcus, who'd started as Maya's primary antagonist, became one of her strongest advocates, defending her fiercely whenever anyone questioned why a decorated veteran was in basic training. Sergeant Tanaka observed these sessions from a distance, reported to Captain Reynolds regularly. She's turning them into a cohesive unit, real leadership emerging, not the kind you can teach, the kind that comes from within. Reynolds nodded, impressed. Natural teacher, combat veteran who survived the impossible and came back to serve. We need more people like her in instructor roles. Week 8 arrived. Final evaluations. The entire company would be tested on every skill learned during basic, physical fitness tests, weapons qualification, tactical knowledge, land navigation, first aid, the culmination of 2 months of transformation from civilian to soldier. Maya scored highest in company history across every metric: perfect weapons qualification, fastest obstacle course time by a full minute, highest written test scores, maximum physical fitness scores. But she took no satisfaction in individual achievement. That wasn't the point. Marcus's group scored in the top 10% collectively. Remarkable improvement from where they'd started transformation, from antagonists to competent soldiers. When the results were posted, Marcus found Maya during evening formation. We couldn't have done it without you. You changed everything for us. You did the work. I just pointed the direction. No, you showed us what real strength looks like, what leadership actually means. We came here thinking we knew, but we were children playing soldier. You showed us the reality. Graduation day arrived with ceremony and formality. General Morrison returned specifically to present awards, accompanied this time by several other high-ranking officers who'd heard about the legendary recruit. The entire company formed up in dress uniforms, families filling the stands, cameras rolling for official record and proud relatives. Morrison took the podium, his voice carrying across the field with command presence. Today we recognize those who've completed basic training, but more than that, we recognize growth, change, the transformation from civilian to soldier. Some transformations are more dramatic than others. He called names, presented certificates, offered congratulations. When he reached Maya, he paused deliberately, letting anticipation build. Staff Sergeant Maya Reeves, not only highest scores in company history across every evaluation metric, but also recipient of the Distinguished Graduate Award for Leadership Character and Extraordinary Contribution to Unit Cohesion. Applause erupted, sustained and genuine. Maya stepped forward, accepted the certificate, and the handshake started to step back. But then she did something unexpected, unscripted, unauthorized. She gestured for Marcus, J.J. David, and Rodriguez to join her on stage. Morrison raised an eyebrow, but allowed it, curious about her intent. Maya spoke, her voice carrying clearly to every corner of the field. These four made serious mistakes at the beginning of training. They were cruel, they harassed, they failed to live up to military values. But they learned, they changed. They worked harder than anyone to transform themselves. That growth, that willingness to acknowledge failure and become better, deserves recognition. Growth matters more than perfection. She insisted they stand with her for the photo, the official graduation photo that would hang in company headquarters. Four former antagonists and the person they had tormented, united now in mutual respect and shared purpose. The ultimate representation of redemption and transformation. After the ceremony, Morrison pulled Maya aside privately. That was generous, more than they deserved. Growth deserves recognition, sir. Otherwise, what's the point of learning from mistakes? If we only celebrate people who never failed, we discourage honesty about failure. Spoken like a true leader, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small case. This is for you. Maya opened it. An instructor badge, official authorization to teach at Fort Bragg. Gold medal insignia that granted formal recognition of her skills and qualifications. You've proven you have something invaluable to offer the next generation. We need voices like yours, perspectives born from real experience. Will you accept? Maya looked at the badge for a long moment, thoughts racing. Thought about the 18 months of hell after Operation Nightfall, the therapy sessions, the nightmares, the medication, the question of whether she could ever be a soldier again, or if she'd always just be a survivor, haunted by ghosts. Yes, sir, I'll accept. Outstanding. Report Monday to the Advanced Combat Training Center. You'll be working with special operations candidates, teaching them the skills that kept you alive, making sure the next generation survives what you survived. Maya felt something shift inside, purpose, direction, a reason to keep moving forward that wasn't just survival or obligation. She had something to give that mattered, knowledge paid for in blood that could save future lives. The graduation reception filled the base community center. Families mingled with soldiers, pride and relief, mixing with exhaustion and celebration. Tommy introduced Maya to his parents, who thanked her earnestly for watching out for their son. Sarah's girlfriend drove down from Virginia, specifically to meet the woman Sarah had talked about non-stop for 8 weeks. Private Anderson brought her mother, over a small woman with fierce eyes. Mom, this is Staff Sergeant Reeves. She's the reason I'm applying for Ranger School next year. Anderson's mother hugged Maya without asking permission, tears streaming. Thank you for showing my daughter what's possible. Thank you for being proof that women can do anything. Thank you for surviving when so many didn't. Marcus's father, the colonel, approached with considerably less enthusiasm initially. He had heard in detail what his son had done, the harassment and cruelty. Staff Sergeant, my son tells me you showed him more grace than he deserved. He learned, sir. That's what matters. The Army needs soldiers who can learn from mistakes, not soldiers who never make them. The colonel studied her, then extended his hand. The Army needs more like you. Thank you for your service. And thank you for teaching my son something I apparently failed to instill properly. As the evening wound down and families departed, Maya stepped outside for air. The North Carolina night was warm, humid, crickets singing in the trees beyond the parking lot. She stood alone, finally allowing herself to relax, to feel the weight of 8 weeks settle and lift simultaneously. Sergeant Tanaka found her there, 2 beers in hand. Thought you might need this. Non-alcoholic since you're technically still in training status, but cold at least. Maya accepted with a small smile. Thanks. You did good, Reeves. Better than good. You changed lives this cycle. Marcus and his crew will be better soldiers because of you. Better people. They changed themselves. I just didn't quit on them. That's leadership. Not quitting on people even when they give you every reason to. Tanaka paused, sipped her own beer. I looked up Operation Nightfall as much as I could without classified access. The public record is limited, but enough to understand the basics. I can't imagine what you went through. Maya said nothing, staring into the darkness beyond the lights. But I'm glad you're still here, still fighting, still teaching. Some days, I wonder if I'm making a difference as a drill sergeant, if I'm preparing them for reality, or just going through the motions. And then someone like you comes through and reminds me why this matters. You make a difference. Every drill sergeant shapes the next generation. You just don't always see the results immediately. They stood in comfortable silence for several minutes. Finally, Tanaka raised her bottle. To survival, to growth, to second chances. Maya clinked bottles with her. To moving forward. Tanaka headed back inside, leaving Maya alone with the night. She tilted her head back, looked at the stars emerging in the darkening sky, and allowed herself a moment of peace. Monday would bring new challenges. Teaching special operations candidates meant facing her own trauma, directly revisiting the tactics and decisions that had kept her alive while 14 others died. But tonight she'd earned rest. She thought about her team. 14 faces she'd never forget. 14 voices silenced. 14 families shattered. The weight of being the sole survivor would never fully lift. But maybe she could transform that weight into something useful. Turn survival guilt into teaching excellence. Make sure their sacrifice resulted in future soldiers coming home alive. That night, Maya moved into instructor quarters, a small apartment on base, private and quiet. She unpacked methodically, placing her few belongings with military precision. Photos on the desk. One in particular, she studied for long minutes, fingers tracing faces she'd never see again except in dreams and memories. Ghost Unit 7. 15 people in full combat gear, smiling at the camera before deployment. Taken 3 days before Operation Nightfall. 3 days before everything went wrong. 3 days before 14 of them died, and one survived to carry their memory. She whispered names quietly. Private Ritual, Remembrance. Ghost 7 Alpha, Jordan Martinez. You made the best coffee in any war zone. You'd be proud of what I'm doing. Ghost 7 Bravo, Sarah Kim. You wanted to be a teacher after the Army. I'm teaching now, for both of us. She continued through all 14, honoring each one, promising to live fully enough for all of them. Her phone vibrated on the desk. Unknown number. She stared at the notification hand hovering over it uncertainly, then answered. Reeves. The voice on the line was digitally masked, gender indeterminate, carrying authority. Ghost 7, secure line active. We have a situation. Maya's breath caught. Her grip tightened on the phone. I'm not active. I'm teaching now. Medical discharge status, remember. The asset from Nightfall. He's alive, and he's talking. Claims he has evidence of what really happened. Who set you up? Why 14 soldiers died? We need Ghost Unit expertise to verify his claims and extract him safely. You're the only one left who knows the protocols. The only one he'll trust. Maya's jaw clenched. Her free hand gripped the edge of the desk until knuckles went white. When and where? 0600 tomorrow. Helicopter pickup from Fort Bragg Airfield. Briefing en route. This is voluntary, but I'll be there. Her voice was steel wrapped in ice. For my team, they deserve justice. They deserve the truth about why they died. Acknowledge Ghost 7. Transmission ends. Stay safe. The line went dead. Maya set the phone down carefully, stared at the photo of her team. 15 faces smiling, unaware of the betrayal that would kill 14 of them. Unaware that someone had sent them into a kill zone deliberately. She stood, walked to her closet, pulled out gear she hadn't touched in 18 months. Combat boots, tactical pants, jacket with Ghost Unit patches, the skull and crossed rifles insignia that had been hidden beneath torn fabric, but now represented her publicly. Tomorrow would bring answers. or more questions, or death. But she'd face it standing, fighting, refusing to surrender. Because that's what soldiers did. That's what her team deserved. She looked at her reflection in the window. Behind her reflection in the interplay of light and shadow, she could almost see them. Ghost images of her 14 teammates. Always there, always watching, always reminding her why she kept fighting. Some missions never end. Some soldiers never quit. Some stories are still being written, and Maya Reeves' story, forged in fire and blood and impossible survival, was far from over. If this story got you hooked, we've got dozens more like it. Warriors who were underestimated, secrets that came to light, and justice served ice cold. Check the playlist in the description for more military stories that'll keep you glued to your screen. And, hey, drop a comment telling us what you thought of Maya's reveal. Did you see it coming? Let us know below.